Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to our little compliance corner here, where I have Matt Cooper, our in-house security and compliance expert, to take us through some additional ISMS standards. We've talked a bit about our normal policy stack. Now we're digging into the ISMS side, and we'll start with O7 today, which is procedure for internal audits. And with that, I'll pass it to Matt to dig in.
All right, thanks, Caitlin. Okay, folks, so the procedure for internal audits. Let's first talk about the context for this policy. So this comes out of the requirements from ISO 9.2 for internal audit as part of the clauses, clause 9.2 and following. And this is for those folks who have done SOC 2, this is a very distinct difference in ISO. ISO has a hard requirement around performing an internal audit. And not only that, but they have some, particular prescriptive sub-requirements around what you need to do for the internal audit. All of those are listed off in section 9.2. And so this governance policy is intended to help you show that you are addressing those things. I'm not going to read through every requirement. I'll just kind of skim over them at a high level. But essentially, the organization shall conduct internal audits at planned intervals. You will check that your own requirements for your ISMS are being met, as well as the standards of the framework, and that your program is effectively implemented and maintained. And then in addition, the organization shall plan, establish, implement, and maintain an audit program, including the frequency, methods, responsibilities, planning requirements, and reporting. And then you'll take into consideration, various other items, including the audit criteria and scope for each audit and selecting auditors, ensuring the results are reported to management, and the retention of documentation. That's more or less the ISO requirements right there in a nutshell. And so for the policy, this is what it's addressing. So starting off with the scope, it moves on to auditor selection. Scrolling down, it talks about the resources needed to perform the internal audit. After that, it talks about the frequency and the schedule. And moving down from there, the criteria, evaluation criteria, etc. So as you can see, this policy is aligning with those specific objectives in the framework. So this is a case where you can certainly modify the content of the policy, but what you just want to be mindful of is that you're still addressing the specific requirements of the framework. So in order to do that effectively, you could, just basically look at those requirements in 9.2, and to the extent that you want to plan, make material modifications to the policy, just ensure that you're still meeting those high points. Scrolling down here, we have some discussion of like labeling of findings, and then we have documentation and reporting. Those were other, and then retention. Those are other like requirements around the internal audit. So the last thing I'll say here, well, it's a little bit outside the policy, but for folks who are new to this, you can literally do the internal audit yourself. However, the auditor must be not a control owner. So there must be some separation of duties. So you're not, checking your own work, as it were. And then the auditor needs to be reasonably competent. So they need, some reasonable competency in information security, ideally something in ISO, as well as, audit itself. You can also use an external internal auditor. So what makes them an internal auditor if you're using an external firm is just this is not your certification audit, right? So as long as you're running this as a program, for your organization, that's totally fine. Vanta has some excellent, very cost-effective resources. I would say, if it's within your budget, it's money well spent. The results are not going to be challenged in the same way, potentially. The independence won't be challenged. The competency won't be challenged if you use a dedicated third-party firm. But of course, you need to make the decision that's right for you. So there you have it in a nutshell. This is the internal audit procedure policy. Back to you, Caitlin.